Friends First by Dominique Wilkins. Chapter 1. At 17 years old, Fiona had a father who was more abusive than ever. Thanks to her unstable relationship with her father, she was incapable of having a real relationship with her boyfriend. She knew it bothered him to see her having fun one minute and then clamming up and shutting him out the next. She didn't want to, but she couldn't help it. Her father had her walking around with her guard up when she dealt with people. She didn't trust anyone. To the naked eye, her father was a good guy and family man, because he never beat anyone except her. He laughed and hugged others whenever his extended family was around. He didn't treat her mother well, but he didn't hit her either. Instead, when he got drunk, he'd come after Fiona. She never gave him a reason to beat her with his shoes or his belts, but he did. She never told anyone, so she'd often have conversations alone, asking herself what reason her father could possibly have to hate her like he did. Since it was a one-sided conversation, of course, she never came up with an answer that remotely made sense. Fathers, do not provoke your children to anger, but bring them up in the discipline and instruction of the Lord. Ephesians 6:4. She only had one boyfriend, Clifton Bradley, who she had been dating for 3 months. She hadn't even come close to entertaining the thought of having sex with him. However, one day when she was in her room talking to him on her Bluetooth, her father tottered in drunk. "What are you doing in here?" he demanded. She jumped to her feet to brace herself and screamed, "Nothing, I wasn't doing anything." "Liar, I heard you in here talking. You got somebody in here? Where is he? You better not have a boy in this house, you whore." "No, I was on the phone. I don't have anyone in here. Daddy, I'm 17 years old. I'm almost grown. How old do I have to have a boyfriend? All the other girls had boyfriends their freshman year," she yelled angrily. "So what is that supposed to mean? Are you in a rush to get knocked up? Are you behind schedule like your little friends? I will beat your ass if you turn up pregnant and you're getting kicked out too." Spittle flew from his mouth as he raised his hand in anger to plant his hand on the side of her face. No matter how many times her father hit her, Fiona never figured out how to duck. She always got hit and thought that after the first hit, he'd sober up, realize the error of his ways, and cry out an apology like they did on TV. No matter how many times he continued to hit her as she cowered in a corner or until she escaped toward the door and out of the house, she still believed that he would stop and apologize. This time, when his first hit landed on the side of her face, it knocked the Bluetooth onto the floor, but not off. Cliff had never hung up the phone. He heard everything. Cliff was a skilled driver and knew the streets well. He made it to her house in less than 10 minutes. Fortunately, Fiona's mother let him in. He pushed past her into the house and followed the voices to Fiona's room. He had never been to that part of the house because he normally was confined to the living room the few times that he came over. His hearing led him to the right room as if he'd walked that hall millions of times before. Cliff burst into the room and pulled her father off of Fiona as she balled up in the corner with her hands over her head, trying to protect her face from the belt that he had taken off. Her father whirled around and practically fell over as he tried to catch his balance. Cliff treated him like a gym room punching bag. As her father received a barrage of punches to his face, Cliff gave him everything he had. He fell back onto Fiona's bed and passed out. He'd have to sleep the rest of the alcohol off. He turned to see Fiona's mother watching silently from the doorway. She didn't look terribly upset, just extremely tired. Cliff was in disbelief. How often did they do this? He turned back to Fiona to help her up and gently urged her to pack enough things for a few days. He was getting her away from there. "For he is God's servant for your good. But if you do wrong, be afraid, for he does not bear the sword in vain. For he is the servant of God, an avenger who carries out God's wrath on the wrongdoer." Romans 13:4.